for the gracious welcome you have extended to us. My government agreed wholeheartedly to accept your invitation to send a delegation to this conference, and they were particularly gratified to learn that their delegates would be associated with those of the other United Nations I see represented around me in this building of historic events. I share with you, sir, regret that circumstances have prevented our Russian allies from being with us. Particularly do I regret this, as I have been fortunate enough to see firsthand something of the magnificent and total Russian war effort. Having been in Moscow last autumn, in those dark days when the capital was threatened but saved by the heroic winter resistance of the Soviet forces, I have seen something of the vast magnitude of your achievement. Even as we meet at this very hour, young men from all parts of the British Commonwealth of Nations who won their wings in your schools in Canada are flying against the enemy. As they wing their way across Europe, they represent a symbol of hope to those who are now enslaved by Nazi tyranny, and for all men of goodwill who strive to preserve world freedom. In the hearts of the enemy, their presence must strike the note of doom. Flying over the oceans, they bring hope and assurance to those men who go down to the sea in ships. Over the army in desert and jungle, they stand guard against onslaught from the air. Sir, the presence here today of delegates of 14 nations is a just tribute, and are confident that the combined efforts of the two great nations in this vast North American continent will produce an overwhelming armada of pilots and air crews. You, Mr. Prime Minister, have led in this realization that the spirit of unity should be infused throughout our common training efforts, and it is to this end that we examine and coordinate at this conference. We applaud the wisdom of your action, and it will be our solemn duty to apply all our energies to this end, and thus contribute to the ultimate success of the armies of right against the forces of evil. Yeah.
The conference is assembling at a time which, in the course of the war, may prove to be the most telling of all. On every continent and on all oceans, the opposed forces are in conflict. Over continents and oceans alike, the forces in the air hold their sway, combining their strength with the strength of the armies and navies of the United Nations to ensure the ultimate triumph of freedom. The negotiation of an agreement to establish a joint air training plan was begun in Canada at the very commencement of the war. The agreement establishing the plan in Canada was reached by the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand in this city on December the 17th, 1939. The plan has now been in operation for over 2 years. In that time, Canada has become one of the greatest air training centers in the world. The plan has already far exceeded its original objective. Thousands of pilots and airmen trained in its schools are engaged in combat with the enemy. They are serving in every theater of war. The plan has been so designed and developed that its output can be readily and speedily increased. The holding at Ottawa of the present conference is a recognition of the imperative need of coordinated air strength as an element, perhaps the vital element, in victory. But it is more than that. It also marks a recognition of the central position which North America has come to occupy geographically and strategically in a world encircling war in the air. In relation to the great areas of combat, Canada and the United States are coming to have interior lines of communication. This continent is at the very center of a war which is all around us. In aerial warfare on a global scale, we of the North American continent have a distinct advantage in that we are able, in the disposition of our forces, in relation either to the Atlantic or Pacific Oceans, freely to cross the continent itself. It is imperative to keep in mind that air training is directed to actual combat in the air. The ultimate purpose all have in view is the attainment of overpowering and decisive air strength. The magnificent contributions already made to that end by the United Kingdom and the United States are the pride of all who love valor and who cherish freedom. Canada's contribution is not to be measured by the extent of our population. In numbers, we are a small nation. Planning and experience during 2 years of war have combined with geography to make Canada, in terms of the development of air strength, a world power. These advantages of planning, experience, and geography, the Canadian people are proud to have an opportunity to share. It is in this spirit that I invite the delegations from our sister nations of the British Commonwealth, from our great neighbor, the United States, from Belgium, from China, from Czechoslovakia, from Greece, from the Netherlands, from Norway, from Poland, and from Yugoslavia, to share in the deliberations of this conference dedicated to the common cause of world freedom. I would